The most racist DJ in the South was forced to play Jimmy Cliff's music for 24 hours straight. It was June 12, 1974, in Birmingham, Alabama. What a KK radio station was the most powerful voice in the Deep South, reaching over 2 million listeners across 5 states. And at the center of it all was Bobby Ray Mitchell, a DJ who had spent 15 years filling the airwaves with hatred, segregationist propaganda, and exclusively white music. Bobby Ray was more than just a racist DJ. He was the unofficial voice of the Ku Klux Klan in Alabama, a man who used his radio platform to organize rallies, spread fear, and maintain the racial divisions that had defined the South for generations. His show, White Pride Morning, was appointment listening for segregationists across the region. What Bobby Ray didn't know was that in less than 12 hours, a federal court order would force him to do something that would change not just his life, but the entire landscape of civil rights in America. The trouble had started 6 months earlier when the Southern Poverty Law Center filed a lawsuit against WKK radio station. The lawsuit claimed that the station's explicit policy of banning all black music violated federal broadcasting regulations and constituted discrimination in a taxpayer-funded medium. Bobby Ray had laughed when he first heard about the lawsuit. "Let them try to tell me what music to play," he had said on the air. "This is Alabama, not some liberal wasteland up north. We play real American music here, not that jungle noise." But the case had slowly worked its way through the federal court system, and on June 11th, 1974, federal judge Patricia Williams issued a ruling that shocked everyone involved. Not only did she find WKK guilty of discrimination, but her remedy was unprecedented in legal history. Judge Williams ordered that Bobby Ray Mitchell personally broadcast nothing but reggae music by Jimmy Cliff for exactly 24 hours, starting at 6 a.m. on June 12. If he refused, WKK would lose its broadcasting license permanently. If he made even one racist comment during those 24 hours, he would face criminal charges for contempt of court. The judge's reasoning was simple but brilliant. She had researched Jimmy Cliff's music and found that it promoted exactly the opposite values that Bobby Ray had been spreading: unity, love, racial harmony, and spiritual consciousness. "Mr. Mitchell has used the public airwaves to promote hatred for years," Judge Williams wrote in her ruling. "Now he will use those same airwaves to promote love." Bobby Ray was trapped. Losing the broadcasting license would destroy not just his career, but the entire white supremacist network that depended on his radio show. He had no choice but to comply. At 5:55 a.m. on June 12, Bobby Ray sat in his studio, surrounded by federal marshals who were there to ensure he followed the court order exactly. On his desk was a stack of Jimmy Cliff records that had been provided by the court, including Many Rivers to Cross, You Can Get It If You Really Want, The Harder They Come, and Sitting in Limbo. Bobby Ray had never heard reggae music before. To him, it was just another form of what he called black noise. He had no idea that he was about to experience the most transformative 24 hours of his life. At exactly 6 a.m., Bobby Ray reluctantly spoke into the microphone for what he assumed would be the worst day of his broadcasting career. "This is WKK Radio," he said through gritted teeth. "By federal court order, we will be playing music by Jimmy Cliff for the next 24 hours. He dropped the needle on the first record, Jimmy Cliff's Many Rivers to Cross, and immediately tried to tune out the music mentally. But something unexpected happened. Despite his resistance, despite his prejudice, despite everything he had been taught to believe, the music began to affect him. Jimmy Cliff's voice was unlike anything Bobby Ray had ever heard. It wasn't angry or threatening, as he had expected black music to be. Instead, It was gentle, spiritual, and filled with a pain that Bobby Ray somehow recognized. The lyrics spoke of struggle, of trying to find a way over obstacles, of persistence in the face of hardship. After the first song ended, Bobby Ray was supposed to announce the next track, but he found himself sitting in silence for almost 30 seconds. Finally, he managed to say, "That was Many Rivers to Cross," by Jimmy Cliff. Next up is You Can Get It If You Really Want. Meanwhile, across Alabama and the surrounding states, 2 million regular WKK listeners were experiencing the same shock that Bobby Ray was feeling. They had tuned in expecting their usual dose of racist rhetoric and white country music. Instead, they were hearing reggae for the first time in their lives. The phone lines at WKKK immediately lit up with angry callers demanding an explanation. But the federal marshals had been instructed to disconnect the phone system for the entire 24-hour period. Bobby Ray was completely isolated, with nothing but Jimmy Cliff's music and his own thoughts. By hour 3, something began to change in Bobby Ray's voice. When he announced "The Harder They Come," there was less hostility in his tone. He even found himself listening to the lyrics, which told the story of a poor man fighting against an unjust system. Despite himself, Bobby Ray began to relate to the message of struggle against overwhelming odds. Hour 5 brought Sitting in Limbo, and Bobby Ray made his first unscripted comment of the day. "That's a beautiful song," he said softly, apparently forgetting that he was on the air. "Just really beautiful." The federal marshals in the studio exchanged glances. They had expected Bobby Ray to remain hostile throughout the entire 24 hours. They hadn't anticipated that he might actually be affected by the music. By hour 8, Bobby Ray was no longer just announcing song titles. He began reading the lyrics along with the music, and his voice started to crack with emotion during Many Rivers to Cross. The song's message about perseverance in the face of seemingly impossible obstacles was resonating with something deep inside him. "I've got many rivers to cross," Jimmy Cliff sang, "but I can't seem to find my way over." Bobby Ray found himself thinking about his own life. For the first time in years, he thought about the anger that had consumed him since childhood, the fear that had driven him to hate people he had never even met, and the loneliness that came from building his identity around opposition to others. Hour 10 brought an unexpected moment that changed everything. As Jimmy Cliff's Wonderful World, Beautiful People played, Bobby Ray began to cry on the air. Not just tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs that were audible through the radio speakers. "I'm sorry," he whispered into the microphone. "I'm so sorry for everything I've said, everything I've done. This music, this man's voice, it's showing me who I really am, and I don't like what I see." Across the listening area, something remarkable was happening. Many listeners who had initially called the station in anger were now staying tuned out of curiosity. Others who had never listened to WKK before had heard about the court-ordered reggae marathon and tuned in to witness this unprecedented event. In Birmingham's black communities, word spread quickly that the most racist DJ in Alabama was playing reggae music and crying on the air. At first, many people assumed it was some kind of trick or cruel joke. But as the hours passed and Bobby Ray's transformation became undeniable, a different response began to emerge. Reverend James Washington of the 16th Street Baptist Church, which had been bombed by the KKK in 1963, gathered with his congregation to listen to the broadcast. Sometimes, he told his parishioners, God works in mysterious ways. Maybe this is how healing begins. By hour 15, Bobby Ray was no longer just playing Jimmy Cliff's music. He was having a conversation with it. "You're right, Jimmy," he said, "after You Can Get It If You Really Want finished playing. You really can get it if you want it. I just never knew what it was supposed to be. I thought it was keeping other people down, but that's not it at all, is it? The transformation accelerating through the night was unlike anything anyone had witnessed before. A man who had spent 15 years promoting racial hatred was discovering empathy, compassion, and spiritual consciousness through reggae music. Hour 18 brought Bobby Ray's most profound moment. As Bongo Man played, he began talking about his childhood for the first time on the air. "My daddy taught me to hate," he said. His voice, barely above a whisper, said it would make me strong, but listening to this music, I realize it just made me empty. This man, Jimmy Cliff, he's showing me what strength really sounds like. By hour 20, news crews from across the South had gathered outside the WKKK building. Word of the racist DJ's on-air transformation had spread nationally, and reporters were calling it one of the most dramatic examples of the power of music to change hearts and minds. Inside the studio, Bobby Ray was experiencing what he would later describe as a spiritual rebirth. As Jimmy Cliff's Love Is All played, he made a decision that would define the rest of his life. "When this is over," he announced to his listeners, "I'm not going back to the way things were. I can't. This music has shown me a better way to live, a better way to think about other people. Jimmy Cliff has done something for me that 20 years of church couldn't do. He's taught me how to love." Hour 24 arrived at 6 a.m. on June 13th. Bobby Ray's voice was hoarse from crying and talking, but it was also clearer than it had ever been. As the final Jimmy Cliff song ended, he sat in silence for a full minute before speaking his final words of the court-ordered broadcast. That was 24 hours of Jimmy Cliff music, as ordered by federal judge Patricia Williams. But it was also 24 hours of education, 24 hours of healing, and 24 hours of learning what it means to be human. Tomorrow, I'm starting a new show. It's going to be called Bridge Building Morning, and it's going to be about bringing people together instead of tearing them apart. The immediate aftermath of the 24-hour broadcast was extraordinary. Bobby Ray kept his word and completely transformed his radio show. Instead of promoting segregation, he began featuring reggae music, gospel, and soul alongside country and rock. Instead of hosting KKK rallies, he began organizing integrated community events. More importantly, his on-air transformation had inspired thousands of listeners to question their own prejudices. Letters poured into WKK from people across the South, describing how hearing Bobby Ray's change of heart had encouraged them to examine their own racist beliefs. The impact extended far beyond Alabama. Other radio stations across the South began voluntarily integrating their playlists, partly in response to the overwhelming positive reaction to the WKK experiment. Several other DJs publicly renounced their racist broadcasting and adopted Bobby Ray's approach of using music to build bridges rather than walls. Within 6 months, Bobby Ray had become one of the most requested speakers at civil rights conferences and interfaith dialogues across the South. He would always credit Jimmy Cliff's music with saving not just his career, but his soul. In 1976, Bobby Ray met Jimmy Cliff in person when the reggae legend performed at the Birmingham Civic Center. The concert was completely sold out, with an integrated audience that would have been unthinkable in Birmingham just 2 years earlier. Backstage, Jimmy Cliff embraced Bobby Ray and told him, "Music is supposed to heal, man. You let it do its work." The federal court's decision to force a racist DJ to play reggae music for 24 hours became a landmark case in media law and civil rights litigation. Law schools began teaching it as an example of creative judicial remedies for systemic discrimination. Judge Patricia Williams later said that she had hoped the ruling would simply punish WKK's discriminatory practices. She never expected it to create a genuine conversion experience that would influence civil rights progress across the entire region. Today, there's a plaque at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute that reads, "Sometimes the most powerful force for change is simply allowing people to hear what they've never heard before." Bobby Ray Mitchell, 1974. Bobby Ray continued broadcasting until his death in 1998, always ending his show the same way. "Remember, we all have many rivers to cross, but music can help us find our way over." This is Bridge Building Morning, and you've been listening to the man who learned that love is stronger than hate, one Jimmy Cliff song at a time. The 24-hour broadcast that was meant to be a punishment became a blueprint for using music as a tool for social healing. It proved that even the most hardened hearts can be opened by the right song at the right time, and that reggae music's message of unity and love can transcend any barrier, even one built by decades of hatred. If this incredible story of musical transformation and racial healing moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more amazing tales of how music can change hearts and break down barriers. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the power of giving people a chance to change. Have you ever experienced a song that completely shifted your perspective? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to check out our other videos about music's power to heal communities and transform lives.